Well, hey, thanks for joining us. We are heading into a little bit of a new season of ministry, a new season of life as we come off of restrictions and try to figure out once again how to do life together. It's a good time for us to remember the basics of what it means to be the church and specifically what it means to be a part of the Pleasant Valley Church family. So we talk a lot about what it means to live life in community and life on mission. We believe that those two always go hand in hand. And so just a bit of review from the first video, we saw that when we open the scriptures, when we read the story of God, we recognize that it's telling one big story, and it's God's story. It's not our story, it's his story, and it's all about God's glory. So from the prophets of old, from the very beginning to the very end, God is all about his glory, and that's what he is doing in all of history. Now, God's glory is most clearly seen in the person and work of Jesus. It's the good news about his life, his death, and his resurrection, the work that he did thousands of years ago to earn our salvation today. And so as the church, we believe that we best glorify God as we live out the gospel in everyday life. So we want to encourage you to invite a few other people to meet weekly and to work through this resource that we have for you called From Meeting to Mission. And it's a fantastic guide, and it's meant to give you some intentional time together with other people to do life in community so that you can learn to do life on mission. And what it does is it goes through kind of the big themes of gospel, of identity, of who we are as God's people, and then how do we live that out in these everyday rhythms. Now, with the reality of the past 16 months, we realized that we might all be a little bit rusty when it comes to gathering people together into groups where we do intentional discipleship. So let me answer just maybe a few questions you may have. The first one being, how do we get started? Well, the first thing you can do is go to our newsletter. You can print off a copy of From Meeting to Mission. It's a fantastic PDF. You can download it or print it off, do whatever you want. If you want, contact me. We can get you a paper copy. The guide is really well laid out, and you can read it through in its entirety so that you get a sense of the direction that it's going. And then what we encourage you to do is once you've printed it off, read through it, then just start talking to some people about it and just see who's interested. And I'm going to tell you a secret again. We've set into some patterns of isolation, so it's going to take some effort. Don't get discouraged as you ask people and talk to people. Pray for them, and then just see where the Spirit leads and see whom you might be able to gather together with. Now, another question might be, how big should the group be? Well, that depends. It depends on the size of your home. It depends on, kind of who you are as a person and as a family. It depends on the size of the families that you might be getting together and even the age of the kids. So generally speaking, we would encourage groups of 6 to 12 people or 2 to 3 families to go through this together. Another question that people have, and this one makes people a little bit hesitant, is what about a leader? Who's going to lead this thing? Who's going to lead the group? Well, here's the thing. It's always good to have 1 or 2 people designated as the group leader, as the group facilitator, the people who kind of gather people together and organize things. You need those people. Now, don't let being a leader scare you. So let me list some of the responsibilities that make a really great leader. Here's what you're going to do. You are going to organize that initial meeting. So you're going to talk to a few people. You're going to see who might be interested, and then you're going to come up with a location. Where can we meet for our initial meeting? And then you might even have a discussion of, hey, let's have food at that meeting. Let's get together around a meal. And probably for that first meeting, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to figure out childcare so that if there are kids involved, make sure you guys have, something to keep them busy for, an hour and a half to 2 hours kind of thing, maybe throw in a movie for them, because you're going to want some time to actually have a discussion as adults. Make sure as a leader, what you want to do is you want to make sure that everyone has a guide. So when you have your group together, then send out the PDF or have them downloaded off of our newsletter or bring some physical copies with you to that first meeting. So once you've printed off the Meeting to Mission guide, once you've talked to a few people and some people have expressed interest and would likely even meet together for an initial meeting, then your question might be, what should our first meeting look like? Well, your first meeting is all about planning and setting expectations. So when it comes to planning, it's things like deciding on a day, on a time, on a place. It's talking about meals. It's talking about kids. It's talking about who's going to share their story every week. And then it's simply setting some guidelines for the group, some expectations that everyone can commit to. Things like praying for each other, things like being prepared for the meeting, reading the material, making some notes, talking about the questions at home together as a couple or as a family. It's about prioritizing your meeting. It's about showing up We understand life happens. We understand everyone takes holidays every year, but you're going to talk about what it means to take responsibility, to catch up when you aren't there, and to stay in touch with your group. And so we wanted to make this as easy for you as possible. And so not only can you download the Meeting to Mission guide, but we've actually created a resource for you, a suggested outline for your first meeting. So there's not a ton for you to have to dream up. Just work through some of the questions, all right? We want to make that as easy for everyone as possible. So print off the guide, print off the suggested outline for your first meeting, and then start finding a few other people that are willing to join you. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. I'd love to chat and help you along the way.